Okay, so there are a lot of reasons why your low back might hurt during sit-ups. So if I'm not actually watching you work out, it's hard for me to know for sure, but I decided it was going to be easier to just make you a video and give you some things to explore in your own body and try and think about and figure out what works for you and what doesn't. So I always like to think about what's going on in my head and neck, what's going on in my pelvis. Because if you think about it, by the way, I don't do real sit-ups. I haven't done a real sit-up in like 8 years. But I'm just thinking of good movement principles. So even if you're doing a crunch or if you're doing a full sit-up, your head has to go from supported to unsupported, depending on what your head's doing, while your head is connected to your spine, and it goes all the way down your back. So stuff that happens in the head could be affecting the low back. So you can try, and you can just take a look. And if my head is, I can't even do it. If my head is really far behind me, it's really hard for me to get up, and I'm straining my low back. Conversely, if I'm really hunched over and I'm fighting my way up, I actually felt that in my low back. So you might check, really pay attention to what's going on with your head patterning. And one thing you can do is lie on a surface and practice just doing a sit-up, from your rib cage up, basically. So tuck your chin. My favorite Pilates teacher always said think like a pug. And curl up to the bottom tips of your shoulder blades, and in theory your hands lift up to about your hip region, and you roll back down. Again, drag your head to tuck your chin, curl up to the bottom tips of your shoulder blades, and then come down. One more time, curl, lift, bottom tips, come down. One person once complained that gave her a double chin, and my teacher said, well, there are worse things in life. I don't know why I told you that story, but. So see if you can do just this exercise without back pain, and maybe just try that for a little while. You can also think about, again, what's going on in your low abs and pelvis. If you are a person we all have some curve right here. That's normal. Some people have a lot of it, or they are hypermobile here. So if that is you, that might be causing some low back pain when you do sit-ups. Again, I don't know. I don't watch you work out. But so just something to think about. So a couple of things. One is, when you think about what a sit-up is, you're going from all the way down to all the way up. And you really got to think about, I think, trying to get long and going over a big barrel. And that's hard to do if the abs are really deep. The front, I'm talking about the front abs. The whole front and back really could be considered our abs or our core. But the front abs, there's 6 layers, they go deep, they're hard to feel. So one thing I like to do, make a triangle, thumbs and index fingers. Put that triangle on my belly button. And, sorry, my allergies are terrible. But I think about trying to, I'm not taking my fingers off my belly button. My fingers stay on my belly button, but I inhale, and then on my exhale, I think about trying to drag my belly button up to my sternum. I'm not trying to suck in, but I'm trying to drag my navel up to my sternum. And it's still subtle, but when I'm doing that very carefully and mindfully, I can feel really deep into my abs. Didn't get it right away. It took me a while of practicing that, but that might be something. And then when you do that, you get that feeling. And then think about trying to engage super deep when you do an actual sit-up. Or you could just do things that aren't sit-ups. No one has to do sit-ups. All right. Another thing you might do is if you have a small ball like this, these are pretty reasonably priced at many sporting goods stores, between your thighs. And so this might help with some stability. It also might make it harder. But practicing squeezing that ball gives you some inner thigh connection, helps connect your thighs to your pelvis, And with that stability, might help with the low back pain. It might make the sit-up harder, but it might help with low back pain. Again, I'm not going to demo this. Oh, okay, I'll demo one. Again, I don't really do sit-ups, especially with like a smaller crunch. That's really useful. Again, I really don't like full sit-ups. That was a terrible one, but I don't do them. So those are just some things you can think about structurally in your body. Like, what's my pelvis doing? What's my head doing? You can also try the roll back. I like to weight my feet. You don't have to, but I'll show you without it weighted. So in the roll back, feet planted, like really imagine you could stand on your feet even though you're sitting. And you perch nice and high, hands under the thighs. You do that think like a pug situation, and you're moving from here, and you're trying to get the tag of your pants on the back of the mat, but the challenge is you also want to keep your feet down. And you can press into the sides of your thighs for support, and then you come back up. So ultimately, tuck, think about moving from the rib cage, think about getting the pants to the floor. You in theory want to get, the tag of your pants, but you want to only go so far as you can keep your feet up. And that might be challenging in itself for so many reasons. So this is just my 10-pound sandbag from my Iyengar yoga days. But you could put your feet under a couch, you could weight your feet down with something, and that will give you more practice in finding this motion, which it is a similar thing in that it puts you in flexion, but you're not trying to just haul your whole head and torso from the ground up and over. So it's the same movement of flexion, but in a different way. So that might be helpful to you. Another thing you might try is lie down, feet. Tabletop is a really contentious position. Let's say, rather than a full 90 degrees, knees more like at an acute angle with your hips. So your hips are making an acute angle rather than a 90-90. And you march one leg, return it, march the other leg. March one leg, and march the other leg. And that is working I can feel that working my abs. And one of the things I do want you to notice, watch my knee and my ankle are relatively still. I'm not doing that. I'm trying to move just in the hip joint. That definitely works some things, but keeps my low back supported because I'm on the floor. One more thing, because I know I've rambled. The double straight leg stretch, it's also called lower and lift. It's the fourth move in the ab series of 5 on the mat, Pilates mat. You make that triangle again, thumbs and forefingers. I place that under my sacrum. So that like triangle-ish bone. Legs up, head on the ground, and I lower, and I lift. And I'm not particularly warmed up right now. But even if I was warmed up, the goal is not to go all the way to the ground. The goal is to work within your range of motion and control. So that means the back is stable. Your hips are obviously moving because your hips are, your thighs are, moving in the thigh sockets, hip joint. Your legs are really squeezed together like you have one leg. And again, this is a pretty powerful exercise, but I'm supporting my low back with my hands. And then if you felt more stable over time, you could lift your head, keeping your low back supported. Curl up the head, practice there. And then over time, you might not need to support your pelvis, and you take your hands behind your lifted head. And those are just options. I know that was a lot to think about, but it was easier than trying to write a long text message about why your back might hurt in sit-ups. So I hope that helped.